On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very exclusive treat. He is recognized globally as the genius behind Six Pack Shortcuts, which was the most subscribed to fitness channel on YouTube before he left in 2015. No big deal. With over 4 million subscribers and a staggering 500 million views, his unique and simplistic approach to fitness became a sensation. Big facts. Despite achieving everything he ever dreamed of, he felt an inner calling for a deeper sense of fulfillment. After leaving Six Pack Shortcuts, he took a bold step, embarking on a profound journey of self-realization. This path of discovery led him to immerse himself in the realms of meditation, breathwork, yoga, and above all, flow states, just to name a few. After 7 transformative years, he returned with a bang with the creation of his transformational flow training, which combines the mind and body to help people break from fear, trauma, and mental limitations. He's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the dynamic, innovative, handsome, and soulful, abundant Mike Chang. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, what a great intro, man. Thank you. Thank you. I was almost blushing when you said the handsome part. I was like, well, I never thought about that one.
I'm
um,
I'm happy I did good by you. I'm really pumped for this conversation. The power of Zoom, social media, and just being able to connect with people all over the world. As we're talking right now, it's the morning for me in New York City. It's the evening for you in Bali. And this is just going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. For our listeners that might not be familiar, my best suggestion is to do a deep dive, play catch up, check out all the unbelievable stuff Mike has going on. What I think is most valuable today is we just have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
yeah, let's do it.
Mike, what is your superpower?
The ability to explain information, to have it to be understood, things that could be complex. I can filter through the complexity and make it simple. See the things that are the most important and kind of cut out the fat.
Yeah.
I've been told that for many years, and now what I explain, what I teach is more complex than ever. We're talking about elevating states of consciousness. We're talking about letting go of fear and getting to a place of inner peace. We're talking about going into understanding consciousness itself. And I think there's not anything that's really more complex than that, because it's one of those, it's a paradox. It's a paradoxical thing once we really dive into the details of it. And I've, managed to be able to make something that you usually would just read about in old books on enlightenment, but make it into something that is practical, something that a person can actually apply and not get into this, meta, physical, this etheric realm type of thing, and just kind of feel like, oh, the cool conversation, but there's not anything that can really be done at this moment. But instead, no, there's actually something very specific you can do, and to connect the dots to how something can be um, not just very complex, but having it to be very simple to apply in the realms of becoming more peaceful, becoming more centered. Just ability to kind of chill out, not make life so serious, not beat ourselves up so much, to be able to do the most simplest thing, which is, you ready for this one? This is, it's the simplest thing. It almost sounds kind of silly when we say it. Just to do what we want to do. That's it. Just what we want to do. It's like watching a dog, want to run straight, and he runs like sideways. It's like, what the heck's wrong with this dog, right? We think it'll be weird. But then if we look at humans, we look at our fellow people around, they're actually exactly doing that. They want to do something, but when we look at their actions, or maybe sometimes the lack of, we find that they're not able to do what it is they really want to do. And then now we have all the things that come in place, but that becomes the most simplest, straightforward desire. And I think that if we can just satisfy that, life is great. It doesn't matter. Not everybody, needs to be super successful. What is success anyways, right? Other than just what the heck somebody wants to do. And if they can do that, we call that success. And so that's really what I'm really passionate about doing. And I think as we dive into that subject, a lot of the things that, that I talk about with peace and consciousness, all these kind of tie in. And you mentioned about personal development and developing our self, right? I think ultimately is to accomplish that one thing, to do what we want.
I think that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I don't know if I could love you anymore. I knew we were gonna hit it off, but this is golden, and I agree with every single word. There's so many places we could take this conversation, but I want to stay there for a second. Consciousness. These are the types of conversations that all. This is really all that I'm interested in talking about. Right now. I'm so excited about it. These are my dinner conversations. For those that, and I want to acknowledge you, you do make complex stuff very digestible. It's beautiful, and you make it practical so people can apply it. When people hear the word that are listening today, they're like, what do they mean by consciousness? How would you describe that?
Well, it's just what we are aware of. It's um it's what we are able to perceive. Let's say I'm looking at you, so I'm conscious of you. And I'm looking at the picture of your book behind you, so now I'm conscious of the book. I'm just being aware of the thing, right? Because that's our experience of life. It's just what we are aware of.
Yeah.
And therefore, everything that is in our life, the problems or the lack of problems, our wins, our losses, the things we like or don't like, all of this is just based on what it is that we are aware of, because they all exist. And so the way that we experience our life, the quality of our life, the experience of life itself is simply just based on what it is that we are aware of, what we are conscious of. And so it's not just about a person understanding this deepest level of truth or understanding everything, because you don't need to understand everything in order to live a great life. In reality, the people that are living great lives, their reality, what they are conscious of, those things create the quality of their life. People that live great lives are not constantly looking at things that is bothersome to them. They're not constantly looking for um, for pain and suffering, for example. However, if we want to dive in real quick and get into a deeper layer of that, what I was saying is just on surface layer. Now, in reality, let's say, what about those people that actually are looking directly at the things that are very suffering and trying to relieve it? Well, then it's still consciousness, but it's a deeper layer now. A person would not become attached to the things that they are aware of, which is the next thing to talk about. So when we are aware of things, right? Let's say I'm aware of a success. I just won at this thing. I just accomplished this goal. If I am constantly aware of the fact that I won, then now there's a sense of myself in play, a sense of self. This is what we call ego, right? Anybody in personal development heard of ego? So when my ego is in play, now I can become attached to my wins. And so therefore, even if I won, I am already setting myself up to experience loss. This is because the idea of winning or the idea of losing, it is all based on our sense of self, our ego. And so therefore, if we become conscious of things, which is just reality itself, right? It's just our life. If we are aware of things, conscious of things, we live life, we do the things we love to do, but we are not attached to it. Or is to say that we are not egotistic about it. We don't pay attention to ourself constantly. Then we are able to be in this middle place between feeling pleasure, I won, feeling pain, I lost. And this middle place, in the Tao, we call it the middle way. And more of something that I feel is more clear for me is just peace, inner peace. It's just when we feel at ease. We just feel very, very comfortable. There's no discomfort. There's no pain. There's a sense of comfort in our body. There's a sense of comfort in our mind. There's not this constant agitation, this constant, I don't want to be here in this moment. I want to escape somehow. That doesn't exist when we are feeling very peaceful. And so to reframe all of that, all it is what's consciousness? It's just things that we are conscious of. It's what makes up our entire sense of reality. And in order to live this nice, peaceful life, we need to not constantly think about ourselves. Because when we do, our ego is in play. There's always this I like or I dislike. There's always a sense of judgment on what is happening. And this sense of judgment, whether it is good or bad, it's going to always keep us in this emotional fluctuation. And as you know, if you want to be consistent in something, you can't constantly be emotionally fluctuating. It will become very difficult. When you're when you're high, emotionally high, things are great, but there will always be an emotional low. And the outcome of this, the reason why it happens, is because we are constantly judging the present moment. We're constantly judging things as right, wrong, like, dislike, agree, disagree, I prefer, I don't prefer, and so forth. And therefore, we will never get out of the loop. But once we stop doing all of that and we just see things for what they are, this is also what we call presence, but this is not always how people would explain presence, but yet it's still presence. But when we truly are present, we don't judge anymore. And when we don't judge, now there's only things that are happening. There are things that we are doing, but we don't pay attention to our sense of judgment. We don't have a judgment on what we are doing. Bruce Lee talked about this. I remember when I first read, I would read this quote that he would say, if you ever read it where he talks about, there's only punching. There's not a man who's punching. Just a punch, just a kick. And I remember reading about it going, what the heck is he talking about? There's not a person kicking, there's just a kick. And I'm like, I remember trying to wrap my head around it. And then fast forward years later, it's like, oh, right, now I get it. And that's what he was trying to explain. And Bruce Lee, basically, he just took enlightenment and applied it to how he fought. And that was able to increase his level of skill set dramatically on top of all the other talents that he had. But his state was at a very high level because he was able to do that.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. And I'm so happy that we went deep below the surface. I know we're just getting warmed up. People often ask me like how I was able to totally pivot and reinvent myself in the pandemic in a short amount of time. And the best way I could describe it is, for the first time in my life, as you can imagine, on Wall Street in New York City, it's go, go, go. But the pandemic, I looked around and I saw a lot of Netflix and day drinking, and I said, that's not going to be me. And really, for the first time, I got really, really, really quiet, and I blocked out the noise and the interference, and I just connected. And that mindfulness was a portal to expansion for me, where I was a vibrational match to start getting creative divine downloads. And it's something that I constantly strive for, is to be able to get in that frequency, so to speak. But for me, I realized now, when you're able to get really quiet, you can almost, and I was reading actually last night before I went to bed, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, and he was talking about how your thought, you can actually pull back and be a witness to your thoughts. They're going with or without you, but that mindfulness turned out to be that portal for expansion to me. I imagine that's a state that you're often in.
So we can pull back, and then we can become aware of our thought, and then we pull back even more, and then we become aware of our awareness. We become aware of what we are aware of, what we know, and then you pull back even more, and then you become aware of your sense of self. And then when you are aware of your sense of self, then you let it go, and then you become not aware of your sense of self. So we always start off by pulling back to be observing the thoughts because it is the loudest. You see, in the beginning, there were all these events in my life that helped me go deeper. So the power of now, you know, was like the book that started it for me.
Really? I
Yes.
was just
I
reading it last night. Love it.
I was when I first found out about the book, I was doing sponsored videos for audible.com. And as part of the part of the things I was doing for YouTube, they're just one of the sponsors. And so every single week, I would do a book, and I would read a book because people would give me talking notes. Like, I don't want talking notes. I'm going to read the book, you know, and I'm going to get the things that I'm interested in. And I'm going to talk about that. And then obviously it's used to promote, the company, but I, didn't care about the talking notes. So one day, one of my team members came in, and she goes, "Hey, I know you're going to be doing a book soon. You should do it on this book. I think you'll like it." And this is right after I experienced an awakening. And I said, "Oh, okay." And she goes, "But to be honest, I don't know if our audience will like it, but I think you will like it." I said, "Well, thank you. Fair enough. Let me check it out." And then I remember I was reading it and I go, "Okay, I see why my audience may not like it. I'm here talking about, bodybuilding and fitness and, creating the life you want." And, Eckhart dives into, the consciousness and the feeling body and all these things. And so I remember I talked about it in that book just a little bit, for that video. And then fast forward, I've read it many times after. And I remember I was reading it and then I stopped on like I think it was like chapter 10. And I remember I was just pondering over what it is I was learning and about feeling and about now, the present moment. And then fast forward about maybe 9 or 10 months later, I had this epiphany that I needed to learn how to let go, that in order to accomplish being present, I needed to surrender. I needed to let go. I needed to stop trying to be present. And I was like, oh my God, I think that's it. And then I open up the book and then I read chapter 11. And guess what he talks about there? Surrender. And I'm like, oh man, maybe I could have read this like 10 months ago and would have got it. But that's been my journey. It's like that. I went the extremely long way. So this way I can find all the areas to trip up on, all the areas that to get lost on. And so I can help people that may be down certain rabbit holes. I can tell them about, well, here's what could happen because it's going on 8 years now. And I spent the first 7 years really, really searching. And so it's just kind of part of my path. But Power of Now is it's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Glad you brought that up.
Talk about alignment. I mean, I literally just picked it up last night. It was kind of random, and here we are. This is so good. I wanted to ask you because I imagine there's a lot of people. In fact, every time I start a speaking engagement, I usually ask who here feels like they're here for something much more than they're currently settling for. Pretty much everybody raises their hand. That was me for a very long time, and I finally put it together. I'm curious, before you kind of left and transitioned to go find something a little bit deeper, what were the feelings that you had? Because from the outside looking in, you were super successful in doing your thing. What kind of feelings did you have that you felt called to kind of listen to your soul and go down a different path?
So my path was uh it's different than some when they go on this. Some people they experience a lot of suffering, and then they start to go, man, I'm tired of this. Let me go and start to make some changes. Mine didn't happen that way. So I'm doing my thing. I'm building this company with my two other partners. We're about 6 years in, and we're still working at 100 miles an hour. And it was very stressful, a lot of pressure. But it was okay, the fact that it was a lot of pressure. It was okay that I was stressed. It was okay that I sometimes will work 3 months, no days off, because I had this idea that, being an entrepreneur, this is just kind of what you need to go through. If you can't handle it, well, then you can't handle success. You got to work hard. That was the mentality. It's kind of that there's a certain type of, frame of mind. I'm sure you look like somebody who probably know how that's like.
That season of grind. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. So then, so I just kept on handling it, right? And then one day, so back in the day, I would smoke, and I'm in Austin, Texas. Everybody's like 1 out of 3 people smoking there, and so I remember I'm in this park, and I see this big tree trunk, just randomly out, and I'm like, oh, this is a really cool thing, looks like the home tree of the Avatar movie. I want to bring it home, so the high thoughts. So I come here and then I bear hug it and then I try to lift it up. And it was really, really heavy. I took like maybe 3 steps and then put it down. And I was like, oh my God, this is really heavy. I looked at my car and my car was like 50 yards away. I said, no problem. I'm just going to muscle my way through, take 3 steps at a time until I get to that car. So I grabbed it, lifted it up again, and I heard a really like sharp pop in my back and just like sharp pain. And then I instantly put it down and I said, oh, okay, I think my back is out. So then I'm like, okay, all right. So then I took a break. I said, I'm going to leave that trunk. So no big deal, because in bodybuilding, I injured myself all the time doing just silly things, right? Between that and making videos, I'm always doing very silly things. No big deal. Now, this was a really big thing. The reason I'm sharing this is because I've injured myself a lot and I know how to heal myself easily. Now, an injury like this, about 60 days to 90 days, gone, and I'm back to normal. Just take it easy, do my normal little rehab stuff. But this injury didn't heal. It actually progressively got worse. And over the course of about 9 months, I remember I couldn't stand, sit, or walk without pain. It was just constant pain. And I was starting to become pretty worried because I have a fitness company where the company is dependent on me making fitness videos, looking lean and all this stuff. And I couldn't even lift up a 20-pound dumbbell. It was like that. I had to lean it against my leg and like walk. It was really bad. So I didn't know what to do. And the only thing that I knew at the moment was I'm very stressed. I knew that that was part of it. But I didn't know how that connected to my body not healing, because I didn't understand how the body and mind worked. I didn't understand about these things before, but this was happening. And long story short, I'm going to fast forward to the main thing. I had this experience at this event where I was able to identify how my sense of self, my ego, was created, how I created it without knowing. I was able to see throughout my life of the beliefs I had and the events I had and how they shaped my sense of reality. And it shaped my desires, it shaped my drive. And I was able to see how all of that was created. And I realized that it wasn't who I was. It was just a story in my head. And when I had these realizations, I had this really big epiphany that I wasn't this voice in my head. And when I realized that wasn't this voice, the next question came up, which is, well, what the heck am I if I'm not this voice in my head? And then I had this sense of, I had this knowing, I heard another voice. I was much lower, sense of knowing that I was the soul. And up until then, I didn't think about things like that. I'm like this business marketer type person. I work out and I train. And so I'm not thinking about anything religious or anything type of, but yet I remember hearing that. And then from there, over the course of the next 6 hours, I was going into my mind and I was trying to understand how everything in my mind, how I created all the stories, why everything in my life happened the way it did. And it was a continual ripple effect of childhood events. One thing led to another. It's kind of like just the way our life is. And at the end of the 6 hours, as I was connecting all the dots to my entire life, to my entire sense of self and everything in it, I was also heavily breathing because it was so shocking to kind of see how I created this sense of Mike Chang, this made up person in my head. Who is Mike Chang? It's just this character in my head. And I realized I made it up. And that was very shocking to me. And as I was heavily breathing, because it felt really shocking, I also felt these weird sensations on the top of my head. So I was just tapping on the top of my head, almost like bang on the top of my head while I was stretching the entire time and just speaking out loud, painting out this entire picture. And by the end of the 6 hours, that I felt amazing. My body felt so light. I literally was about to levitate off the ground. Like any lighter, and I would have been floating. Like I was watching my arms, and my arms were just kind of dangling next to me, and they didn't feel like my arms. And I remember I was walking around going like, I feel like I have helium inside of me. Like I'm just kind of like floating. What the heck is going on in me? And that injury in my back, all that pain that I was dealing with for 9 hours, 9 months, disappeared on the spot. And that's kind of what started this journey, when I had that experience, because the way I felt was so good, nothing could touch it. There was nothing that I've known that could even relate to it. So instantly, I knew this is exactly what I want. This is what I've been looking for. My mind went quiet. I used to have so much thoughts, I couldn't even pay attention in a conversation. My head was just too loud. And suddenly it was complete silence. And that sense of peace and bliss, I cared about nothing else. All I wanted was that. And I said, you can take everything. I don't care. You take everything I have. I don't need anything. Just give me a couch to sleep on any person's place. I don't care. I just want what I somehow got right now, which I have no idea what it is, but I want it. I want to keep it. And I'm willing to give up everything for it. And soon that's exactly what I did. I started to walk away from my life, one thing after another. And I never looked back. I just kept going. And I just started going really, really deep. And before you know it, my life, I was surrounded by people that are really interested in these type of things, consciousness and higher levels of self and dimensional stuff. And nobody around me was interested in business, marketing. That was just suddenly I'm in this whole new world. And I spent many, many years there until finally I started to connect the dots, and I started to, I would say, kind of become like this bridge, between, because I had to come back into I would call it like the modern world, but it's like when you're in this state, it's weird. It's like I spent so much time wanting to succeed and to be successful, do something. And that's just my frame of mind. And then when I was in this time, it was like I was entirely a different person. I walked away from all of it. I just focused on what it is I wanted to figure out. Once I figured it out, I realized everybody needs to know about this. Everybody. Everybody needs to know how their mind really works, how their body and energy and consciousness really works. And it's not that complicated. It really isn't. And so in order to get the message out, I had to go and build a platform again. I had to go and build an audience. I had to go and get it back on social. I didn't care about posting, but yet here I am. Had to jump back on and start posting. And we've been doing that now for, actually about 3 years, really similar to your time,
Mike,
and
real quickly, I just wanted to interject. I apologize. Where did you actually physically go to lean into all this stuff?
so I started my journey off in Austin. I stayed in Austin for a little while.
Got it.
From there, I traveled to different parts of the States. I lived in a van for a while. I just sold everything, just gonna hit the road. I did some traveling to different places like Philippines or Thailand, and eventually I'm here in Bali now. So just different places. I didn't have any exact place that I really wanted to go or care to go, because when we're studying consciousness, it's like it's always around. It wasn't like I needed to be in any special place or needed to to have any special experience. I was studying the consciousness within myself, how the world really worked, all this stuff. So I was learning from everybody. And I've ran into all walks of life, really, really, really different than the people that I was spending time with my whole life. And it was a very interesting time, I have to say.
Yeah, a huge piece of your journey. There's no place in the world that I'd rather be than right here with you right now. This is beautiful. And it's funny because I had a bunch of things that I wanted to ask you, but this conversation is totally spontaneous and off the cuff, which I think are the most valuable for the listeners and so forth. And we're talking a lot about inner peace. And it's funny because if you ask me what success meant to me, like my definition 3.5 years ago, I would have said wealth or financial. Now, I was much less enlightened back then and much more immature, and I had to go through my journey and so forth. But if you ask me today, during this season of life, the word that comes to mind is peace. And we've been talking about it a lot in this conversation. And so I think this will be very valuable for everybody listening. Maybe they could do something about it. What would you say is the number one obstacle to achieving inner peace?
So the number one obstacle is not fully experiencing it enough to realize how valuable it is. Now having that reference point, we get used to feeling a certain way, and we know that there's something better. But what are we willing to give up to get to it? There's a price. That price is time, it's money, it's opportunities, it's relationships. And so if a person was to fully experience how it's really like to be in this extreme state of peace and bliss, then they will instantly realize that it is worth more than everything that they have, everything that they do. Nothing can even touch it. But that cannot be, it can't be told. You tell somebody that, they're like, wow, that sounds great. But that's it. They can't experience it. So that's the real big obstacle. Now, how do we solve that? Right? Nowadays, plant medicines are becoming more popular, in different places. That is one window into these things, a psychedelic type of plant medicines that allows somebody to take a peek into how it feels like to be more peaceful. There are downsides to this as well as the upsides. Downsides is, well, they would say the upsides is they're able to peek into it and they can feel how it's like to be at this state of peace without really working for it. You just drop in some plant medicines and just shoot you up. Now, the downside of that is because they don't know how to get there without the substance. So they only had a good taste of it. So now the only way that they have experience on how to get back, or the only way that they know how to get back, is to take more of this substance. So now this is where we go into the realm of microdosing, constantly looking for that next trip where they can go to the jungles of Peru or something. And before you know it, the characteristics of doing, quote, plant medicines and addiction to drugs are starting to become very similar. And I had this happen, to me as well. Like I mentioned, I spent a lot of time going down many, many rabbit holes. So now I can speak some things about it. So what I find is actually needed is, if a person feels really called to do that, great, go for it. But just know that you're going to open up Pandora's box, so to speak. And now you're going to know how it's like to have this sense of peace. And it's a shortcut, but it will be a shortcut that's going to consume you. So the way to solve that is to be able to know how to get there, how to be able to create this state without any substance, without having to take any special trip People do 10-day vipassanas, right? Where they go on a 10-day meditation. They meditate for hours and hours and hours every day. Going to a seminar, workshop, and all these things that are great, but they're not sustainable. A person needs to be able to do the first thing, which is they need to do a practice. In yoga, you call it a sadhana. And a sadhana is a daily spiritual practice. And I just call it practice because I don't like to make things sound like there's some special spiritual term or religious term or something. It's just a practice. You just do the moves every day, like how you brush your teeth and take a shower. Nothing, it's nothing special. Don't put it on a pedestal. Just what it is. But what it does is this practice, if you do it right, is going to start to change the energy inside of you. It's going to start to change your state of mind. And if you do this every day, every morning when you wake up, and then you do it every evening, then slowly you start to open up on the level of the body, the physical body. You start to open up the energy in the body. So the energy starts to flow. When the energy in the body starts to flow, our consciousness starts to evolve. It starts to expand. So now we're able to become aware of more. So earlier when we're talking about consciousness and that determines our reality, now we're able to have a bigger awareness of reality. We can literally become aware of more information. It's like we step into a room, a person can be fixated on one single thing or just one area or one idea, or they can take a step back and they become aware of everything simultaneously happening in this room. And so the ability to become aware of more is just based on our consciousness, the amount of energy in our body, which is directly correlated to the physical body, how open it is, right? What we feed it, the type of movement or the lack of movement. It's also correlated with the thoughts that we have. And so the combination of these two things. So when we do a practice to clear the energy in the body, to release the tension, the tightness, now the energy gets to flow. The mind becomes more expanded. And now we become aware of habits that we maybe haven't noticed or have noticed but weren't able to change. We are now able to take a step back and, like you mentioned, observe the thoughts. But that's how we do it. Because even if we want to observe the thoughts, it doesn't mean that we can. But when we increase the amount of energy and we increase the amount of awareness, we can easily observe the contents in our mind.
I imagine this has a lot to do with what you also talk about in regards to releasing trapped emotions. Is that right?
Yes, because emotions, it's like this energy that's inside of us. When we experience emotions, we naturally have a tendency to want to tighten up. And this is something that's very natural because all emotions, when we experience stress, anger, sadness, fear, we tighten up in different places. It's a body's natural response. Somebody can be biting the jaw, tightening up their stomach, their neck and shoulders and different parts. And then what happens is now the body tightens up and it holds. So therefore the energy cannot circulate. It cannot leave. So we created this energy, or we say we generate this emotion, but the emotion cannot leave the body. Now we're holding on to it. And that's how it starts to remain in the body, because we don't fully let go after we tighten up. We let go maybe 95%, but that 5% accumulates in the body because we aren't fully being present with the way we feel. If we are sad, we don't care to want to feel sad. It doesn't feel good. We want to kind of lift ourselves up, right? Let's go have some fun. Let's listen to some music. All right. Let's kind of clear our mind. So the last thing we want to do is, hey, let's sit with this sadness. Let's relax and really feel this sadness and fully feel it, right? Nobody does that. But yet, if we did do that, then we're able to give our body the attention it needs to be able to fully let go instead of just holding on to that tension. And if we fully let go, now that emotion can be fully processed or experienced. That when we now are experiencing this emotion, we're now fully feeling. Our mind is not fixated on what happened. It's not thinking about all this random stuff. Therefore, it becomes more present. So when our attention, our mind becomes more present, we're able to also see more clearly what really happened. We don't look through this lens of what he said, she did, or our perspective when we had the emotion, right? We're able to now take a step back and actually see this event more clearer, which means we're able to understand what happened. We're able to maybe make a different decision next time or have it to be a lesson of some sort. And then that's it. But because we don't do that, and instead we just want to feel better, so this emotion stays in the body, the tension stays in the body. Our mind, instead of learning from it, we just decide to kind of store it back there in the cloud. Now we're just kind of still upset at that person. We kind of don't like that thing. We don't think about it, but it's still way back there. And we get reminded of these things. We get reminded that you did this to me and I never forget you, right? It will come up in different times. We never really forgot because we always held on to it. And now you see, so that's stored in the mind. Tension is stored in the body. The emotion is also in the body. And this energy that is stuck in here in the body, the tension and the blocks that are stuck in the body, they also create physical problems. So now what happens when our body's tense, right? We start to not circulate very well. So now we're talking about blockages in circulation of blood, circulation of energy. So now there goes the nutrient, there goes the oxygen, there goes everything that needs to allow us to be healthy. Now that gets affected. So then now we're diving into disease and sickness. So that's why when you look at a person that experiences any type of disease and sickness, there's also emotions that are stuck inside their body. You listen to their mind and you will hear the stories, the guilt, the heartbreaks, the fear. You see, it's so therefore the body, mind, emotions are all just a reflection of each other. And we don't have to be an expert at all three. We can look at one and recognize that if this one is happening, the other parts are happening simultaneously, even if we can't fully see it. Yeah.
A couple words that come to mind right there are, I imagine this is causing cortisol, the stress hormone, and also the way you were describing the trapped emotions remind me of like unhealed trauma, right? If you don't tend to it, at some point you'll be triggered and it'll come back. You'll have to deal with it at some point.
Yes. And the thing is, it never really leaves. It's that it gets activated. But when it's not fully activated, it just serves as like a lens, like a filter that we see life in. You know, if we think about how do we make decisions, right? You know, what determines the perspective that we have about people, about situations, about anything, about life, about ourselves? What determines that perspective, right? And as we start to dive into that, we will find that perspective is heavily influenced by the emotions that we have. If we get upset, then the way that we see a person, see a situation changes. We all know that. And then when we're chilled out and we're, more relaxed, it comes back to quote normal. But now imagine that we hold on to these emotions and we never fully let them go, which then that means we have this very thin lens, this mental lens in our mind. And because it's so thin, because just a little thing, we don't even notice that it's there, right? It's just way, way in the back. But now think about how many years we've been around and how much emotions are we experiencing on a daily basis from the time that we're just babies. So if somebody is 30 years old, we're talking about 3 decades of emotions. And a person's not experiencing just one emotional thing a day. So now that lens, every single time, that little thin one has gotten very, very thick. And this lens now is affecting our entire reality. It's what determines the way we see ourselves, the way we perceive the world. And so therefore, when we get triggered, then it becomes very apparent. But even when we're not triggered, it's always affecting the way that we perceive things.
This is so good. The only negative I got going on is we don't have 20 hours to chat, but I know it's just the beginning of the friendship. One of my favorite conversations, we're all over the map, but I think this is the really deep stuff that is most valuable if people can become aware and really grasp it. But of course, I have to ask you about the exciting stuff that you have going on now, which I'm super pumped about. And I wanted to ask you personally, what is the difference between like a regular strength training session and maybe a flow 60 session?
So there's a lot of differences. Flow 60 is something that I created over many years when I realized that we needed to go and let go of this tension in the body. And we want to let go of this fear, let go of this emotion. I've been bodybuilding for decades, and so I know it helps, but that in itself wasn't enough. So I realized if we really want to go and let go of these trapped emotions, we need to have other methods on top of just strength training. So when we think about becoming more peaceful, relaxing, right? Becoming more calm, connecting to ourselves, we can say, well, meditation will come in mind, doing yoga, right? Stretching and breathing. Some people will go and do different types of massages, or they'll go and do pranic healing and Reiki and on and on and on. Sound healing, go and ding stuff. So there's all these different methods. I realized that we need to find something that we can be in control of, that we don't need to depend on a facilitator. We don't need to depend on special devices. It's something that we can do every day. So I studied many training methods outside of bodybuilding, over the last 8 years now. And there are 5 training methods that I'm now doing all the time because these 5 methods are very simple to do. They're very, very effective. And when you do them in a very specific sequence, it moves energy very quickly. It's like using a butter knife to cut a tree versus using like a chainsaw. It's just faster. And so what we do is we first shake the body. And when we shake the body, we vibrate the body, and this isn't like I invented shaking. I mean, come on, it's been around forever. If we look at all of our massage devices, all of these massage chairs you sit in it, what is it doing for you, right? Vibrating you. So we shake the body so we can increase that energy inside, open up the circulation. And after we open it up through shaking and vibrating the body, then we use strength training to exert, because we have emotions that are deep inside and we need sometimes to force it out. Just like naturally when we get upset, we want to pound something, yell, do something like that. So we exert, and we do it in a way that doesn't create negative outcomes. That means I don't yell into a pillow or yell at somebody or go punch things. I'm going to actually take that exertion and I'm going to use it for strength training. And then after that, we go into stretching and we focus on bending through the spine because we want to open up the energy. And the spine is the energetic highway. It's where the central nervous system runs. And it's the chakra systems. So once we open that up, then we go into breathing, because breathing can access deeper than the other 3. But if we just did breathing by itself, we wouldn't be able to hit some of the other layers that shaking the body, tapping the body, strength training, and stretching was able to do. So that's why we do breathing as the 4th. And after we breathe, the body is now very, very open. We can feel a lot in the body. And if you have emotions, it's going to come up. You're going to feel it. People are crying sometimes at this point. And then at this point, we need to connect deep within these feelings. We don't need to think about the emotions. We don't need to think about what happened. We just need to feel it fully. And so what we do, we close our eyes, we take our attention, and we place it inside the body. And now we fully feel the sensation, the experience that we have. We're basically feeling all of the things that we didn't feel for all those times that we decided just to feel better. And instead of dealing with what was actually happening, now we get to catch up a little bit. Let's feel what's actually happening in the body. And this is what we call meditation. And so when we meditate in this way, we're able to go deep really fast. Because if you and I were to sit here and just start meditating now and close our eyes, it will take a little while for our mind to slow down. And then once our mind slows down, then we're able to enter into a meditative state. But that could be, on average, for most people, about 20 minutes. So we'd have to meditate for 20 minutes just to get into a meditative state. And then from there, if we want to get 10 minutes of meditation in, we got to sit for 30 minutes total. But when we do it in this way, where we go through the methods to open up the body, to calm the mind already, when we enter into meditation or start meditating, we're already in a meditative state. So the entire practice is a meditative movement. And yes, what's the difference between that and strength training? Well, we're now able to go and strength train, increase flexibility, but most importantly, we're able to open up the energy in the body. So we're able to get all of the benefits. And if a person was to go, well, I want all of the benefits and I want to have a really great body, then all they will need to do is to focus a little more on the strength training part. And this is where I show people how to do these things. And personally, for me, my training is like that. I'm able to maintain some muscle and still be in decent shape, but yet I'm clearing
You're being
my.
humble. You're in great shape.
So I'm doing all right, but that's the thing. It's like we can still have everything. We don't have to just pick one thing or another. So that's the major thing. This practice allows us to have the best of all worlds: strength, endurance, flexibility, cardiovascular health, but it also allows us to clear the energy, and we can also take care of our mind and emotional health as well. It's 60 moves. It takes about 60 minutes to do. However, once somebody gets very familiar, they can shrink this practice down to 30 minutes, 7 minutes. It starts to become something that they do as just part of their life. It's not a box. I always compare it to like brushing your teeth and taking a shower. Something you do every day. You don't judge it. You don't get excited if you do a good job on it. You don't get upset yourself if you kind of missed a couple of spots. You just do it. Right? It's just something you do. It's just a daily self-care routine. No big deal. And that's what this is. And there's no big deal. You just do it and you never skip it. But once in a while you might, but you don't care. You just do it the next day. It's no big deal. But by doing it this way, now we're able to be consistent. So there is actually a way. The practice is one thing, but there is a way of how to do this practice. And there are 7 principles, 7 life principles that are applied to the 60 moves. And for a person to be able to apply all 7 principles along with every single move they do, they put their mind in a state of flow. And that's the goal. And a person can work towards it. In the beginning, they're just going to learn the moves. And over time, when they know the moves, they start to focus more on the actual principles. And then over time, they can apply the principles consciously while at the same time do the moves. And they can get their mind into this state of flow where they're just in this meditative state.
So good. And if people wanted to get involved, how do they work with you? How can they get involved?
So right now we have programs online. We have a 60-day program, and they can just go to like flow60.com. There's an application process because we want to make sure we're working with people that are committed. So we want to ask some questions, and then from there they'll be able to work with me and the instructors. We've got instructors all over the world. We do a lot of live sessions because this type of work is very immersive, and people need a lot of support. And there's a lot of questions once we start to bring things up. So we're there to support people on a daily basis. So we got accountability systems, daily practice, everything.
Yeah, absolutely love it. And we're going to put all that in the show notes. I know we're getting to the very end here, but this just came straight off the cuff. Can I ask you one more question, Mike?
Sure, absolutely.
Just based upon the way that this conversation is going, it's so beautiful and it's really made an impact on me personally. Just like being able to energetically connect to stuff and block out the interference. The word manifestation gets thrown around a lot these days. And a couple of years ago, when I really leaned into this stuff and started understanding vibrations and energy, I really started to understand it, and I'm still working on it and getting better every day. But for someone out there that's listening, like, how do you manifest something? I feel like there's no person better to ask than you right now. How would you answer that, and how you can manifest things into your life?
Mm. So manifestation, we can say, is just when we are able to create what we want. Some people look at it as like almost this magic thing, like I manifested. Well, no, you actually also did the work, you know. So therefore, manifestation is not magic, but it's not just doing the work as well. It's almost a combination of the two. So when we say manifestation, we're really saying that when you're doing the work, you're also in an alignment. So what does that really mean in alignment? Remember earlier when we said that the most important thing a person needs to be able to accomplish is just doing what they really want, not getting in the way. And so manifestation really is just about going after what you want, but not getting in the way and stopping yourself from getting the things that you want. And it sounds really silly, but yet everybody's actually stopping themselves. And the way they would do that is that they want to accomplish a certain goal, but then they don't wake up earlier to do it. They don't go and send that email. They don't go and write out that business plan. They don't take any action. And then they would make up excuses. They would put things in front of them that would allow them not to have the time to do it. They will say yes to things that they should have said no, because suddenly they say yes to it. I don't have the time now. I already obligated myself. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're feeling fear. They feel all this emotion inside. So what a person needs to do to be able to manifest is there's a shortcut. There's a lot of things a person can do, but there is a shortcut. All right. And we're talking about that because six-pack shortcut. Hey, I love shortcuts. I'm still after it. Right.
I love
Still
it.
after it. All right. So you want to know the biggest shortcut. All right. Let's say someone goes, okay, I'm listening now. What's the biggest shortcut? All right. I don't want to spend 8 years or 3 years. What can I really do? Here's what you do. Take action every day. Don't let go of the idea of feeling good. Let that go. Okay. Don't chase the feeling good. Instead, know that when you go after what you really want and you're going to face your challenges, you're gonna feel uncomfortable. Practice relaxing, practice being calm, and taking action every day. Because when a person's taking action, automatically they're able to overcome fear. Automatically, the action itself overcomes doubt. And even if they have doubt and they take the action, the next action chips away more of this doubt. And then the next action chips away more. And it's just a matter of time when somebody has taken action enough that the doubt doesn't exist anymore. So keep taking action, and then it would overcome the doubt, the fear, the lack of this, all of those things. But make sure that when a person is taking action, that they are able to stay relaxed, stay calm, which is why they have to do practice every day, because their body doesn't know how to let go. Even if they tried, their body's still holding on, still tight. Because when they do that, now they're not building up so much emotion inside of them. They're letting it go as they're taking the action. And simultaneously, they are learning how to relax, learning how to be able to be more calm. You see, I always say relax and be calm because it's understandable. If I tell somebody, be present, be present, be present, there becomes a lot of questions that come after that. Right? How do I do things to be present? If I have to think about it, I need a plan. How do I be? Let that go. Just practice being calm because literally by being calm, you accomplish everything else. To be calm, you have to feel your body. You can't just not feel your body and be calm because how do you even know that you're calm? You have to feel it. So now when you feel it, automatically your attention is out of your mind. It's in the present moment where your body exists. See the trick there, right? So when you feel calm, it's like, oh, suddenly you become present. If I tell you to be present, you're going to think in your mind, it's like, okay, well, how do I stop this thinking that I'm thinking about? All right, it doesn't work. Focus on being calm and relax, and automatically our attention comes to the present moment.
So good.
That combined with taking action, that's all we need to do.
Yeah. It reminds me of like marrying the spiritual with the practical. Like absolutely set the intentions, have the audacious goals, but then do the work and stay. I'm wondering what you think about this. I consider myself a little delusionally optimistic. I'd rather focus on what can go right as opposed to what can go wrong.
I think it's good to focus on what can go right. However, sometimes things happen and it's not what we planned.
Most of the time,
However,
entrepreneurship.
when that happens, right? When it happens, if we if we don't judge it, we don't give it much thought, it's like that's just what happened. And then all we do is keep looking at what route we need to take to make it what we want. And that's it. That's really it. It's like we don't get stuck on it. We don't go and hold on to it. We don't make a big story or make it a big deal. And we just focus on the bigger picture. What am I here to accomplish? What do I need to do versus what do I want to do? Big difference. That's almost like the question of what is the right thing to do versus what do I want to do? If we really take a look at those two questions, they're very, very different. And when a person focuses on doing the right thing, forget about what you want. Forget about what you want. Forget about your preference. Instead, look at the question as, what is the right thing that I need to do? And if a person follows that, everything in their life comes together. And let that be their compass.
So good. I have like a dopamine hit. I'm just high from who needs plant stuff. I'm just high from this conversation. This is unbelievable. We're gonna put all the cool and exciting stuff that you have going on now in the show notes and so forth. Hang up for 1 sec, Mike. I want to connect with you after. I want you to know you're the definition of being in alignment, inner peace, and unbelievable deep wisdom. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today. I mean, that was unbelievable.
Good one.
Yeah, love the conversation. I know it's late over there. Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's been nice chatting with you.
We were kind of all over the map there, but I think those are the best conversations when they're not just like, scripted, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd love to stay connected.
Let's do it, man.
Do you ever come out here to the States or?
Sometimes